Are you a seven-figure practice owner that wants to do more without burning out? Join us for the Seven-Figure Practice Retreat, a luxury mastermind where high-level practice owners step away from the day-to-day to build systems, strategy, and freedom in the Dominican Republic. This February, spots are limited, so apply now, and our sponsors are covering 95% of the cost over at practiceofthepractice.com/7. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/7. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanak, session number 1276. I'm Joe Sanak, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. Some of the sessions that you may have missed out on that we've done earlier this week, unlocking the secret power of groups in your private practice. And we weren't talking about groups like group counseling. We were talking about group mindset. We talked with a jazz musician from England who's also a professor of management. And he talked about group mindset and how to kind of tap into that. We also talked about A/B testing with your ads and your copy with Brandon Grill. And then we just had a talk from our group practice conference. In case you missed that earlier in the year in May, we have that happening again May 4th and 5th, 2026 here in Traverse City. We've also got a lot of other things going on. The Seven-Figure Practice Retreat is happening in the Dominican Republic in early February. So if you live someplace cold like I do and you just want a reason to get someplace warm, come join us. Those applications are actually closing on the 20th, so right around the corner. So over at practiceofthepractice.com/7, you're going to get a free room from that at an all-inclusive. Our sponsor is actually paying for your room, so you just got to pay for your flight and a small admin fee that just basically covers our cost of putting it on. So we're bringing together 30 group practice owners that are seven-figure practice owners. Day one, just last week when we opened the applications at the time of this recording, we had 15 of those 13 slots filled. So hopefully it's still open for you if you're just hearing about that. I go back to when I first started in my private practice. I was working as a full-time foster care supervisor. I had built this side gig counseling practice to literally pay off student loan debt. I was like, if I can raise an extra $1,000, every month or so, I can put that on the student loans. I can pay them down. We can, pay off the car or like redo the closet to make it look nicer or get a nice mattress. Like there's always kind of that next, the next 1,000 was going to be allocated towards something. And I had no idea what I was doing business-wise. I remember my first website that I built. It was on this thing called Microsoft Office Live 360 Live. It was all the words they still use, but in different configurations. But it was free. There was no hosting. And I packed keywords on there. I had a white background and put all these other words like counseling, therapy. It was the most scuzzy, weird way of doing a website because I didn't know better. I had never heard of Psychology Today. I'm sure most of you have heard of Psychology Today, but I remember I was at an LPCs of Northern Michigan meeting, and my friend Nick, who worked full-time at the hospital, he also had a private practice. So we would always be competing for the first and second place on Google for Traverse City Counseling. And I'd be first, then he'd be first, and then out of nowhere, this thing, Psychology Today, starts ranking higher than both of us. And Nick's like, oh yeah, I signed up for this thing, and I got 3 clients my first week. And when I went on there here in Northern Michigan, I think there was only 10 clinicians that were on there. So it was right when they kind of got started. My first week, I remember I got a few clients from it. And that's how I learned about most things that made me successful in private practice. Literally just talking to people and then being like, I guess I'll try it. Luckily, we're past that point. We have podcasts like this. There's tons of other great podcasts that are out there. And we have experts now that not only help you with Psychology Today, but help you rock that out. And I'm so excited to talk with Aaron Price today. Aaron and I connected through mutual friends. And as I've heard what he's done, he's the founder of Therapy Profile Pro, a platform that's trusted by over 1,000 therapists to enhance their Psychology Today profiles and attract more of their ideal clients. With a background in computer science from Duke University and experience building products for the mental health industry, Aaron combines technical expertise with a deep understanding of therapists' real-world needs. He previously led growth and marketing initiatives at leading education and climate organizations before transitioning to mental health after a life-changing personal therapy experience. Aaron's mission with Therapy Profile Pro is to give therapists a simple, effective way to attract their ideal clients while spending less time on marketing. Aaron, welcome to the Practice the Practice podcast.
Joe, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, I got to jump right into life-changing personal therapy experience. You're not going to get away with that with a therapist to not dig into the deep stuff right away. So what was your life-changing personal therapy experience, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, no, of course. So I've been doing therapy for 7 years now. And it was funny. I fell into therapy as growing up. It was always something that was very stigmatized in my household. I started working with a therapist when I was 13 because I was needing help with some behavioral issues. I hated it, was so embarrassed by it. And then kind of later in life, I returned to therapy out of desperation. I was in crisis. I really, really needed support. And I just went to the first therapist who had space and was in my insurance and could take me. And I am the luckiest person in the world in that it was an amazing experience. I still work with him today. And it's been totally life-changing for me. I do therapy every week, and I say it's the most important hour of my week. I'm the biggest advocate among my friends. I've gotten so many friends to start doing therapy as well.
Yeah, I love that. Now, when did you have the idea for doing Therapy Profile Pro?
Yeah, so it's funny. So I left the education world and was really struggling to figure out what I wanted to do next. Education was always the thing I cared most about. And I think a really important question when you're starting a business is, who do I want to serve? And I was thinking about therapy seekers initially. Have helped friends get into therapy, big advocate for therapy myself, have seen just how painful it is to find the right therapist. My case of finding the right therapist the first time is incredibly, incredibly unlikely. And so I posted on Reddit, and I was just like trying to understand how other people find their therapist. And I posted in one of the subreddits, and this really weird thing happened. Within 5 minutes of my post, and my post wasn't even asking for a therapist for myself. It was just a question, how did you find your therapist? Just trying to understand how people are approaching it. And I had multiple therapists DM me on Reddit saying, if you're in my state, I'd love to work with you. And I was like, this is very peculiar. Like my kind of understanding of therapy and how therapists work is, reaching out to therapists and then having big wait lists and not being able to get a session and always thinking therapists had no problem building their caseloads. Totally not the case. 50% of therapists are underbooked. And so I started exploring that more. I built a tool to help one of those therapists with Reddit to help him find his ideal clients faster on Reddit. We had some initial success, and I was like, wow, this is really exciting. I'm getting to help people that I care deeply about and do a good thing. From there, he started telling me about Psychology Today. I learned 60% of all referrals in the US, all introductions to therapists, happen on Psychology Today, which is mind-boggling. And Psychology Today doesn't give great advice to therapists on how to craft a good bio and how to craft a good profile. The thing I hear over and over again, Joe, is, therapists tell me, grad school taught me how to be a therapist, not how to be a marketer, not how to do these different things. Mm-hmm. And because therapist profiles aren't, the best marketed and the best equipped with marketing best practices, what happens is it's more difficult for them to attract their ideal clients. And it's also more difficult for therapy seekers to find the right therapist for them. So I built this little tool in a weekend with the first version of Therapy Profile Pro, launched it. It ended up getting 40,000 interactions online. We had over 500 people use it within 2 days. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I think we're onto something. That's when we teamed up with Omar Ruiz and his marketing firm, revamped it with all of his powerful tools and relaunched. We've now worked with over 1,400 therapists, and it's been a blast. I say I have the coolest job ever. I'm so lucky that I get to help helpers.
Wow. It's so awesome. I mean, I think oftentimes we talk about big ideas here because there's therapists that, have ideas like, I'm in a therapy session working on trauma, and then like, how do I take this to the world? And they overthink it and they spend months doing it. And you just took something and built it in a weekend. Now, granted, you have years of technical experience. You know how to do that sort of thing in a way that most therapists don't. But I think it really, points to that idea that we often talk about here of having a minimum viable product, to just say, like, how do you throw spaghetti at the wall with this? How do we see if there's a market? And that could be as simple as, if you have an email list, just emailing them and saying, I'm interested in this. You went on Reddit and just started asking questions. And I think that's where I see people miss the mark, where those that are therapists often are so used to writing the 20-page dissertation or thinking through, the paper they had to write in grad school for the whole semester. They can build programs and be thoughtful and do citations and make sure it's, evidence-based, and get paralyzed by perfection, where they just don't give it a whirl. And so I love that right away. It's like, I had this idea. I talked to some people on Reddit. It seemed like there was something there. I learned some of the stats, and then I built this thing in a weekend and got tons of people to sign up for this thing. And then instead of just letting that ride, you doubled down. You then, worked with Omar. You worked with other people to say, well, okay, round one was great. Now how do we make this even more legit? And then, the round after that, you're doing the podcast tour. I love that it's like you reinvest as things are working.
Totally. And I think it's a shots on goal. And this is my advice when it comes to therapist marketing as well, and building your caseload is, it's really iterative. And the more shots on goal we can take, the more we're going to learn. And kind of the best approach, I think, is, make a educated guess on what you think is the best route, try it really quickly. And then with the new information and the new learnings, how can I adjust and now try a new thing? And eventually, if you keep taking shots, you're eventually going to strike gold.
Oh, love that. Now, tell me a little bit more about Psychology Today. So the things that maybe worked 5 or 10 years ago, we've had different people talk about profiles. Things change so fast. And I think that part of this is people using AI to write their profiles and not write it. And first, let's start with, how do people F up their Psychology Today profile? How do they make it look ugly?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. And what's interesting too, and I loved your story earlier, Joe, about kind of how the success you had on your Psychology Today profile right away. I think there's a lot of rhetoric online. A lot of therapists I talk to say, Psychology Today is not what it used to be. It, used to be a gold mine, and now it doesn't really work. With the right profile and with, a strategic, well-optimized profile, it can still be an incredibly effective referral source. So that's something I really want to highlight. In terms of common mistakes, not using all 3 paragraphs. That's a big one. Having a profile photo that's not professional, that's not warm, not using targeted keywords in your listing. Another one is, this one's pretty interesting, is some of the top specialties you can choose are not actually ones that users can filter by. So if there's a therapy seeker, coping skills is an example of this. If you place coping skills as one of your top specialties, a lot of therapy seekers, when they go to Psychology Today, they'll say the thing that they're needing support with. Anxiety, ADHD, these different things. And coping skills isn't one they can actually choose. So you're not showing up in those filters. In terms of insurance, when you're writing down, when you're inputting the insurances that you accept, if you accept insurance, actually using those checkboxes instead of writing in as write-in boxes. That's going to allow us to show up when people are filtering by those different insurances. So it's a lot of things like that. One of the biggest ones I see is not telling a cohesive story. On Psychology Today and in marketing in general, specialists are always going to be generalists. And what I see is, and this is actually really funny, I was helping a therapy seeker the other day. She was looking for a therapist to support her with relationship issues. And she was looking for a therapist, and we were on Psychology together. And it's really interesting for me, and I think this is a great practice for therapists to try, is help someone find a therapist and have them talk out loud as they're going through Psychology Today. See what resonates with them, what they're noticing. That's going to give you really valuable feedback on what's important in the Psychology Today profile and how people view your profile as well. So she's going through and she finds this therapist, and their profile photo is awesome. Their preview text that you see in the directory page is awesome. So she clicks. The therapist earned the click. And then she starts reading. She's like, they get me, they get me, they get me. And then by the second paragraph, the therapist is now talking about eating disorders and ADHD and all of these other things that they support. And you can see on her face, she goes from so excited and feeling so heard to feeling confused and lost, and clicks off the profile. And so one of the biggest things is when we think about our endorsements, our intro video, all 3 paragraphs of our personal statement, our top specialties, all of it, how do we tell a cohesive story? How are we the expert? How are we the specialist when it comes to one specific thing? And I'll tell you, Joe, a therapist that I work with, he was starting his practice, and he was building his caseload. Within 3 months, he had 3 clients that he was seeing on a weekly basis. He was doing 3 client hours, and he was feeling pretty defeated. But he noticed something really interesting, and he was like, there is a specific profession that keeps coming to me, and they're having a really good experience, and I'm really well equipped to serve them, and it energizes me to serve them. And I said, let's double down on that. Let's try. You are the therapist in California when it comes to this profession. And within 3 more months, his caseload is now 25 client hours per week. And it grew immensely. And it's like really testament. It's scary, right? To narrow down. We feel like we're lowering the pool. But when we are able to narrow down, it's actually quite effective.
I love that. And I think, an example I often give is, there's a French restaurant in town here. And if I went there and say I brought a friend that was just like a burger guy, if he asked for a burger and wasn't kicked out of this French restaurant, that burger would probably be delicious. It'd be on like great French bread, even if it's off menu and they chose to make it, they'd probably use smoked Gouda or something like that. Whereas if I went to like J&S Hamburg, which is this little hamburger joint, and asked for creme brulee, they're not going to be able to make it. And so the idea of what you said of, if you're a specialist, people assume you're a generalist. So when I was doing my counseling, I helped angry kids. People assumed I also could help anxious kids. I could also help kids that were in kind of other situations, kids that just were dealing with everyday stuff. But because I focused on angry kids, and I really liked that population, it was really easy because I became known as the angry kid therapist. I could help families in that situation. And so the more that people can niche in, I think it's really helpful to stand out in competitive markets. I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. If you run a group practice, you know that accepting insurance can be overwhelming. Between credentialing, billing, and payroll, the admin side can easily take over your week. Headway was built to help you handle this, and they're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices. Whether you're growing your team or running an established practice, Headway makes the business side easier with faster credentialing, higher per-session rates, and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid group practices. There are no subscription fees, just the support you need to run your practice with ease. Run your best group practice with Headway, trusted by thousands of group practice leaders to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. Curious how Headway can work for you? Head to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to learn more. Now, you had said something about like the videos. What makes a good Psychology Today video?
Yeah. So 2 things. One is just having it. So many therapists, and I don't have a good stat here, but so many therapists don't have the video. This is a huge miss for 2 reasons. The first reason is therapy seekers love the video. As I talk, and I do a lot of listening tours, talking to therapy seekers, people using Psychology Today, why did this profile resonate with you? Why did you decide to reach out? One of the biggest things I hear over and over again is, I loved their video. So that alone is worth making a video. The second really interesting one on Psychology Today is profiles with a video are actually going to be shown more than profiles without a video. And what I mean by that is once you scroll through the initial profiles, still on that first page, they have a little carousel of profiles with videos where you can click directly onto those videos. So having a video is going to allow you to show up more. So would highly recommend having a video. The video is supposed to be 15 seconds. We found it can be about 19 seconds they'll allow. And it's really quick. You just want to say an intro, thank the person for being on your profile. And then you want to say, who you help, how you help them in clear language, no clinical jargon, and then a clear call to action. And the call to action is something that a lot of therapists miss. People need a push to reach out. Getting a therapist, reaching out to a therapist is a really big step for a lot of people. And so we need to provide them the support and the clarity on how to do that.
You just described what we often teach, which is the pain to transformation formula, that it's super basic. I help, and then the pain to, and then the transformation, like one sentence. I help couples that have lost the love to find romance again. So really like that idea of like, what's your quick one sentence thing that should be on your website that's what your practice says, and to just be able to do that. I can speak firsthand that when my daughter was looking for therapy, we were on Psychology Today, and she specifically wanted, someone that specialized in teens that also was female. And so we're looking at these pictures, and it literally went like this. She looks nice. She doesn't look nice. She looks nice. She doesn't look nice. It was just purely on looks. And I said, well, maybe we should like read a little bit about them too, or watch some of the videos. And of the 20 to 25 that matched our limited criteria, I think only 3 had videos. And it's like, and then those 3 unfortunately weren't even taking clients. It was like, oh, we went through all of this, and then like the 3 that we like, none of them are taking clients. What should people do when they're not taking clients? Should they turn off their Psychology Today profile? Should they put, to save you time, right now I'm not accepting clients? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so my recommendation is always keep the Psychology Today profile active. That's a really great spot for visibility. Psychology Today, 1 million people a week go on the website, and their SEO is phenomenal. When people search therapist near me, that's often what's going to pop up before your website, anything else like that. So keeping that alive is a really big credibility factor. So even if you're totally full, I'd recommend keeping it up. But do mark, not currently accepting new patients. And then that'll just denote for people that, it's not worth reaching out right now.
Mm. So if we think about Psychology Today as just a general marketing strategy, what other marketing strategies are you seeing that people are employing similar to Psychology Today?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think like the trap a lot of therapists fall into is trying to do every marketing channel. And the reality is you don't have to be an influencer. You don't have to do, TikToks or Instagram if you don't want to. Just focusing on 1 or 2 channels and doing them really well is enough to build your practice, which is super exciting. I've seen therapists have success with all sorts of things. Reddit's a really interesting one I didn't expect. Google Ads is, of course, one therapists have had a lot of success with. Building referral networks. I have some therapists who are fully offline, and they're building relationships with referrers. If you can be really narrowed down on who you serve, angry kids, then you're able to think, okay, where do those families spend time? Where do they hang out? And then from there, how do I get my name known in those communities, right? And so it's really what works for you and what energizes you. But picking 1 or 2 that are going to be most effective is really important. And then kind of in that line, Joe, is like there's 2 really important things there as well. One is understanding where your clients coming from. So when we're doing an intake, or a first session, there's 2 questions I want you to be asking. The first question is, how did you find me? The first thing we need to understand is what referral channels are actually working. How do we have data to see, 1, where are people finding me most, but also where are the clients that I'm best able to serve and most energized to serve? Where are they finding me? Maybe you find that, you get a lot of clients from, one source. Another source actually gives you clients who tend to resonate with you more. And that's a really good insight. And then the other one we really want to focus on is, why did you choose to reach out to me? Is that other question we should be asking. And that first question is, where are they coming from? And the second question is really pivotal because it's going to give us insight into why clients are choosing us specifically. And maybe it's like your daughter and it's, you look nice. I was talking to one therapist and she started asking people this question and she said, it was really funny. Everyone that was reaching out was saying the same thing, that they loved this quote I had on my Psychology Today profile. And I was like, that's so interesting. So she like doubled down on that quote and she put it on her website. Other times it's, that's really going to allow us to be iterative when it comes to our messaging to figure out what resonates most with people. And so thinking about those shots on goals, that's really going to inform our ability to have those shots on goals.
Yeah. My other daughter, for her, it wasn't she looks nice. It was, oh, she has a dog. Like literally that was the thing. Like the person had a picture of themselves with their dog. They're a dog person. Right away, she's like, all right, we're cut from the same cloth. And so it can be little things like that. But if you don't ask, then it's just like you're missing out on knowing, okay, dog pictures really work with my audience of who I'm trying to attract. Now, tell me about the tool. Like, what does it look like? How do people use it to actually enhance their Psychology Today profile?
Yeah. So the tool is based on our framework, and Omar Ruiz, I have to give him a lot of credit. He developed a ton of the framework, and how it works is you input your Psychology Today profile, you just copy and paste the link, hit go, and then what the tool is going to do is it's going to analyze your profile based on the 15 criteria we've identified as moving the needle when it comes to Psychology Today. And then it's going to give you a report card. Scores 1 to 4 of how well you do on each of the criteria and actionable suggestions on how to improve and why each one's important. So from there, we want to make it instant. We want to make it the easiest way for you to improve your Psychology Today profile. There's another tool built in as well that's a rewrite tool. And what this is going to do is it's going to take your current profile, it's going to take the rubric and the score, and it's going to rewrite your personal statement so that it scores a 10 out of 10 on the personal statement sections of the profile. Now, what's interesting here is it's going to retain your authentic voice and your personality through the initial personal statement that you wrote. So I see therapists who are using ChatGPT, using AI to write their personal statements, and it's usually pretty obvious. And with therapy seekers, it's interesting. I have had multiple therapy seekers, as they're doing the talk through exercise with me, go, Aaron, this one's totally written with AI. And they're like, just skip that provider. What I think is really novel about our tool is because it's based on these frameworks and because we're using your authentic voice to then write the profile with AI, we don't get that feedback, which is really exciting.
So awesome. Well, Aaron, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Yeah. I just want to give you permission. I want to tell you that you got this, for one. And two is you have permission to market. I think in the therapy world, marketing is often seen as kind of sleazy or grimy. And the reality is it's really a way that we can best serve our ideal clients. If we can help people, so many people don't go to therapy because finding the right therapist for them is so painful. There's this term that I keep hearing over and over again, which is therapist dating. It's so hard to find the right therapist. They can't do it. And if we are able to market effectively, say really specifically who we are best able to help, if we can really actively show our vibe and who we are, if we love dogs, if we, these different things on our profile, that's going to allow people to actually find us better and find the right therapist for them better so that we're able to work with the people we're best able to serve. So I am just giving you permission, market, explore, iterate, try to figure out who energizes you most to serve, who you're best able to serve. Marketing is not a bad thing. It's actually something that's really beneficial for your clients.
Mm-hmm. So awesome. If people want to use the tool, where should we send them?
Yeah, send them to therapyprofilepro.com. We have a free basic audit tool, and then you can pay $59. It's a small fee in order to unlock the advanced tool and the rewrite personal statement tool as well.
Oh, so awesome. Aaron, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, Joe, this was a blast.
I love really practical shows like this. Sometimes my curiosity takes me into just really interesting stories that maybe aren't quite as practical for the therapy world, which are fun too. I think that it's good to be inspired to just kind of say, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a business owner? What does it mean to think, more in depth about the world? Those are all important things, but also, we need to also make sure our businesses go well, which is why, the last episode about A/B testing and marketing and this episode about Psychology Today just dovetail each other so well. And there are these tools out there to make it easier for you. I wish I had known that or had this around, 10 years ago when I had my practice. But it wasn't there. Aaron was probably, still doing other stuff. We ran the math a while back on how many clients you need to get to be able to make Psychology Today worth it. And if you look at the monthly fee and what the average client ends up bringing in, it breaks down to about one client every 26 months. So, compared to most things in regards to ROI, you basically need one client every 26 months. And so if you're looking to get a free 6 months of Psychology Today, you can head on over to practicewiththepractice.com/Psychology Today. That automatically refers you over there. If you don't have one of those accounts yet, you can set that up totally for free. Try it out for 6 months. They're not a sponsor of the show. We do get an affiliate for those referrals, but that's how we help give you 5 episodes a week of this podcast. Also, our sponsor, Headway, today is just amazing. They work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid groups. There's no subscription fee, and they support what you need to run your practice with ease. They simplify all of the insurance and help people have in-network care. If you want to see if Headway is right for you, just head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.